We're just 4 races into the 2019 F1 season and we've already seen an engine upgrade from Honda. Now, is that good news or bad news? The people who are going to give me that answer are Scott Mitchell and Tom Errington. Scott, I think in the world of autosport and motorsport.com, you are our Honda correspondent, really, so you're perfect for this. Honda engine upgrade already. What are the reasons behind it?
So basically, during the Chinese Grand Prix weekend, Daniel Kvyat in the Toro Rosso, that he had to have an engine change. They detected, at the time they called it an anomaly on the data. So it went back to Sakura, got completely checked, and they discovered effectively a quality control issue. There was something in the build of the engine or in the design where they thought, oh, that's a reliability risk. And it should be pointed out that Alex Albon and the 2 Red Bull drivers had no engine problems over the first 3 Grand Prix weekend, so they could have continued. But alongside the start of the season, Honda had already been developing Spec 2, and they'd already brought that forward quite a bit to just make sure, just in case they had a problem at the start of the year. So maybe even Honda was sort of thinking, oh, do we really trust ourselves to get a few races into the season and be okay? It was basically a backup. That's not to say that they compromised Spec 2 to bring it forward, because I was really impressed when I heard that they were bringing an upgrade. I was thinking, wow, that's fast. 4 races into the season, you only had this problem in China. It was sort of like last year when they brought a fix, I think it was the MGUH for the second race of the season. I was thinking, whoa, they've turned that round quick in 2 weeks, and it turned out they'd actually just turned up to the first race with last year's MGUH. But yeah, this time basically they just thought, okay, well, we're making gradual progress with this. We've spotted this problem, and Spec 2 is ready. It was designed to be more reliable anyway, and it fixes the problem that we spotted in Spec 1. Azerbaijan's a very power-sensitive circuit, so as everything was ready, they basically decided, let's take no risks. The plan for Red Bull and Honda all year, and Toro Rosso as well, was always going to be, we're probably not going to be able to do the season on 3 engines. So basically a problem was identified, they had a solution in place, and it shouldn't compromise their schedule going forward.
And this was about durability rather than performance, is that right?
Yeah, there was a rumour that it would be worth 20 brake horsepower, which was quite quickly dismissed in the paddock in Baku. I asked Honda F1 technical director Toyoharu Tanabe on Sunday evening. We'd heard that there was a performance gain, but is it correct to say that it was very small? And he was just like, very small. So it was very much about...
What is that in horsepower?
I don't know. What do we reckon? Like a few? A few. Let's call it a few. Yeah. So it was an outright performance gain in a very small way. The main thing was about reliability, but within that came a sort of secondary performance gain, because by having a more reliable engine, by having an engine that you can take to the limit more often and through a race and running higher engine modes, mean that Red Bull and Toro Rosso will get more out of that engine than they would have done if they'd stuck with the Spec 1. So the ceiling of performance hasn't gone up a massive amount, but how often they can access maximum performance has probably gone up. So short term, there is still a performance gain of sorts.
Now, Tom, talking about performance, how would you assess Honda's performance over the first 4 races of the season? This is the first time we've seen that engine, or that engine manufacturer, because it's not always the same engine, in a top-line car. Whatever McLaren tell us about some of the previous chassis they produced, this is the first time a good car has had a Honda engine in the V6 era. Where do we think they stack up so far?
It's tricky to tell in some respects, in that Gasly's testing crash had the legacy there in terms of understanding the chassis, and the problems Red Bull had understanding it means the engine performance wasn't quite a focus. Now they seem to be on top of that, so the coming races we're going to get a real idea of where Honda exactly stacks up. But I think the promising thing you can take there is, as Scott mentioned, with the reliability improvement, there's a little bit more scope for performance. That's something that Renault was unable to do quite often last year, particularly with the MG UK trying to introduce something that was reliable and had a performance benefit. It always seemed to be one or the other. They've got a better balance there, and Verstappen's talking about mid-season challenging Mercedes and Ferrari. For a first year in this partnership, if they can achieve that goal by that timeline, that's a very, very promising start.
Scott, obviously you said this was somewhat unexpected to have a new engine spec coming on this early. Red Bull are probably expecting penalties anyway, as you mentioned, later in the season, but what does this mean for Honda's plan throughout the rest of the season? Because we still have a long way to go.
Honda readily admits that it's earlier than they would like, or they would normally introduce the first upgrade of the season. If you were going to go by a sort of conventional upgrade plan, you're sort of aiming for Canada, race 7 of the season. Just doing my maths there, making sure, yeah, that's fine. We haven't added Vietnam yet, so race 7, Canada. And then you're sort of looking at if you can go the other side of the summer break, that's the ideal scenario. So then you've got the second half of the season, or less than the second half really, on your sort of spec-free engine. And then you're sort of rotating specs 1 and 2 in Friday practice and stuff like that to make sure that you can get the mileage out of your third engine. What Honda's done by going in for race 4 with an upgrade is that the first engine's done half as much as their rivals will do. So it's put them out of sync. It means that there's going to be this weird cat and mouse between the engine manufacturers this year, because now when Mercedes and Renault and Ferrari bring their second specs, they'll move further ahead, but then Honda will move on to spec-free sooner, so they'll catch up. And then crucially, what I think it's done is it's opened up a window now for Honda to have a Spec 4 at the end of the year. We know that there's going to be more than 3 engines in the Rebels and the Toro Rossos. It makes no sense to take those grid penalties when Honda's still trying to claw back ground and trying to prepare itself for a World Championship challenge next year, to take those grid penalties and not try and introduce any kind of development. So maybe it won't be a fully fledged Spec 4 at the end of the year. Maybe it'll be a Spec 3.5, or it'll be a Spec 3 with a couple of small things that are different. But I would be amazed if whatever they bring in, say, the last 6 races is exactly the same as they bring after the summer break.
Tom, Scott mentioned there, this is all about building up to a World Championship challenge. That's not what Red Bull and Honda's season is about this year. So does that mean the prospect of taking those penalties isn't actually that much of a worry?
No, not really. It's in a way, it's a free pass, isn't it, to try some new things and go for it. And that's what they did last year. Toro Rosso, the first year, was when there was a chance to try something new, or there was something not quite right, they took the opportunity to try something new, and that's given them a good platform for this year, because they've got a year of data where they took every opportunity to try something new and learn from, taking it to this year. The fact that, again, it's just a step towards that ultimate goal suggests that they should do exactly the same thing again, and chances are they will.